Today we're going to be talking about how to address an envelope. If we want to send a letter to somebody in another part of the country, in another part of the world, we need to put an address on an envelope. And we're going to look at some addresses and talk about what are the components of an address. Basically, an address is simply telling us who is it for and where is that person located. And we want to make our address look the same every time because we want anybody who's looking at it to be able to read it. So let's take a look at this address right here. We're going to start off with the name. Every address is always going to start with a name. Who it's going to. It could be a specific person's name, or it might just be like manager at a restaurant or president of a company. But usually we put a person's name. And then we usually have a street address. And a street address is two parts generally. It's usually a number and the name of the street. So in this case, we're looking at the number is 805 and the street name is St. Cloud Road. We don't necessarily write out the word road. We use an abbreviation for road. And then in America, the last part of our address is always three sections. City, state, zip code. So the name of the city here is Los Angeles. The state is California. We don't write the word California. We just use the abbreviation, which is CA. Every state has a two-letter abbreviation. Notice both the letters are capitalized. And finally, we have a zip code. And a zip code can be a little confusing, but a zip code is basically the name of the post office that this person's mail goes to. Every post office in this country has a number that tells you where it is. In this case, the zip code is 90077. So this mail needs to go to that post office in that state, in that city. And then from that post office, they will deliver it to this street. Once it gets to that street address, then whoever gets the mail at that house is going to pass it out and make sure that that particular piece of mail goes to that person. Let's look at another one. And I think you're going to see that it's about the same. Again, we start with a name at the top. After that, we have the street address. Street address is a number, 1060, and the name of a street. In this case, it's West Addison Street. And then we go down to that third line, and we have the three parts. The city, Chicago. The state is Illinois. We abbreviate that with capital I, capital L. And then the zip code. Which post office does this individual operate at? 60613. Okay, let's look at one that's a little bit different. This is the address for an apartment building. So it's almost completely the same, but you're going to find one difference. You're still going to have the name of the individual at the top. That's who this mail is for. You're still going to have the number on the street and then the name of the street. In this case, the name of the street is a number, which can get a little bit confusing, but it's still just the name of the street. The building number is 129, and the name of the street is West 81st Street. And then if you go to the bottom, you're still going to see the name of the city, which is New York, the name of the state, which is also New York. You have a city and a state that both have the same name. The city, we write it out, but the state, we use the abbreviation NY. And then we have the zip code, 10024. But you'll notice something different. This person lives in an apartment building. So there's many people living in the same building. They all don't want all their mail going together. So we add this extra line here, apartment 5A. That means when the mail delivery person, the mail carrier comes to this apartment building, the mail carrier is going to know that this particular piece of mail goes to apartment 5A. A different piece of mail might go to a different apartment. So we just add that little extra thing. And you'll find that some addresses have extra little things that you have to add into them. But generally speaking, all of our addresses have the same components. The person it's for, the street that they live on, the city, state, and zip code. And if you put that on your mail, almost every piece of mail that you send in the United States will get delivered. Now, I want to take a quick look at some addresses from outside of the country. And you'll see things are very similar, but a little bit different. Here's an address from a different country. So the very first thing you're going to notice is we have to put the country at the bottom. If you were mailing something to somebody in America and you were mailing it from outside of America, you would have to put United States at the bottom. But since we're sending this to the country of Australia, we have to put that at the bottom. Other than that, it's pretty similar. We've got the person's name. We've got an address, so we've got a number and the street name. And then here we have the city, just like we had in our American address. We have the state. Once again, we don't write the name of the state. We write NSW. That stands for New South Wales. That's the name of the state where Sydney is. And then we have a postal code. And you'll notice that in Australia, the postal code is only 4 digits. In America, it's 5 digits. We have more postal codes in America, but it's the same basic premise. Who's it going to? What street do they live on? What city do they live on? And then we add the country because it's an international mail. Let's do one more international piece. This one's looks a little different the way it's formatted, but I think you're going to find it's similar. This is someone in the United Kingdom. So we'll put that at the very end, United Kingdom. Who do we have? Well, here's the person's name. Okay. And then the next thing we look at is the street. We have the number of the house and we have the name of the street, just like all our other addresses. We've got the city here. This is not a state, but it's the part of the country. Here they capitalize it. And then we have a postal code. Just like in America, we have the zip code. Here we have a postal code. Now, postal code in the United Kingdom uses a combination of letters and numbers. You'll find that in some other countries as well. But it's the same basic premise. Who it's going to, what street they live on, where they're located. And whoever we're mailing to, whoever we're mailing a letter to, that's all we need to put on the envelope. So let's use this one right here. We're going to mail this letter. When we're mailing a letter, we're going to put the address of who it's going to kind of big right in the center of the letter. So we'll put it right here. We always want to write with our neatest handwriting because we need the letter carrier to be able to read it. And then I'll write underneath that the number and the street. And then underneath that, I'm going to write the city. I'll put a comma and then the abbreviation for the state. If you don't know the state's abbreviation, you might have to look it up. And then finally the zip code. Okay, and that is the address of who it's going to. The reason we want to do it this very specific way is we want to make this process as easy as possible for the people delivering the mail, the people sorting the mail, and the letter carriers delivering the mail. If we mix things up, we make their job more difficult, it slows down the mail. So this is our to address. But when we write a letter, we should always also write a from address. So we'll just use one of these other addresses that we had here. We'll use this one here. And then up here, this is where we would put who the letter is from. So this is where you would put your own name and your own address. The reason we put this address, we call this the return address, is we put this here because if there's a problem, if the letter carrier can't deliver your mail for some reason, there's a mistake or there's some sort of problem, we want to make sure that the letter gets back to you. They can return it. The other reason is when people get mail, they like to know who it's from. So we put the return address, the from address. Just as important to make sure it's neat and easy to read. So we have the from address, the to address, and then the last thing we're going to need to do is add our stamp. So in America, any letter to anyone in America, as long as it's not too heavy, just needs one stamp. You'll notice that we have our return address here, our to address here, and we'll put the stamp right there. I'm not actually going to stick this stamp because I'm not actually going to mail this letter. These are pretend addresses, but that is how we would, we'll stick it on like this. This is how we would get our letter ready to go. And that is a letter that is ready to send.